one night in June, we got into a very big, complicated firefight. Multiple enemy positions, taking fire from the rooftop. We had a grenade drop down. And I had an enemy machine gunner and shooters up on a rooftop, barricaded in, kind of created massive chaos.
Welcome back to the Mulligan Brothers. Today, this video, I'm joined by Jason Redman in a very exclusive clip. Today's episode, as always, is sponsored by Huel. I'll talk about these a little bit more later on in the video, but this is the Huel Black Edition that I have been using for the past 3 months now. I think that Huel's had Black Edition ready to drinks out, and it's an absolute game changer. So find out more with a link down below. Let's dive into the video. So then, I'm guessing it's everything changed after 9/11. That was the sort of the moment.
Yeah, so, kind of interesting. So I selected for that commissioning program and got picked up for it probably in the summer of 2000 and was slotted to start school in the summer of 2001. So I married my wife in July of 2001. I checked out of the SEAL team. I checked into Old Dominion University to the ROTC unit there. And was ready to start classes. August, I think I started classes. And obviously we all know what happened on 9/11. And I wanted, immediately, I told you, Bobby Ramirez was my best friend, who I told you the gym is named after. So Bobby and I were standing together. We had both gotten selected to go to school together out of our team. And we had linked up in between classes when everything started happening, and we were standing in the student center, and he and I watched the tower, both towers fall, and just said, yeah, we're at war. It's like an intentional thing. So we both tried. We wanted to get out of the program. Like, hey, like, put us back in a platoon. We know we're going to war. And we had a really wise commanding officer, probably one of the most respected leaders in the teams at the time, and he just said, hey, go back to school. He said, this war is going to last for decades. And I mean, what a prophetic thing to say days after 9/11. If 20 years of warfare we fought, and it probably could have kept going if, I don't know. So anyways, an interesting path. So continued down the path at school, did really well, very driven. Like, I think this, hey, got to be number one, got to grind, got to crush it, got to. I ended up graduating summa cum laude. I ended up being ranked number one, came back to the SEAL teams, and kind of lost myself then. I guess I developed a false sense of how good I was. And came back to the SEAL teams with probably an ego, and made mistakes. I made mistakes. A lot of things had changed from prior to 9/11. I had grown up in a peacetime military. So a lot of the tactics and stuff we used were based on prior conflicts. And this often happens in militaries around the world. Suddenly they get into a large scale warfare. In this case, multiple fronts at this point. So by 2004, when I commissioned and came back to the SEAL teams, we now were fighting in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Something similar, some of the urban warfare, close quarters combat similar, some things very different. Desert warfare, mountain warfare, mobility operations, things like that. So it really caused this major rewrite of SEAL tactics. So when I came back, here I thought I had all this experience and everything had changed. And this is where ego got in my way. I also think, it's funny. I've always said ego. I think, now as I'm getting older and reflecting more, maybe it was insecurity. I actually think that makes a lot more sense. I was unwilling to reach out to the younger guys and say, hey man, I don't know how to do this, because I felt like it was weakness. And I started messing up. I also had a pretty big personality conflict with our senior enlisted guy, so he and I butted heads. I wasn't making very good decisions. I was struggling with some of the tactics. So then I started drinking too much. So that further eroded my credibility as a leader. Kind of continued to ride this train all the way until we deployed to Afghanistan in the summer of 2004. And that was the Operation Red Wings deployment. So the Marcus Luttrell story was Operation Red Wings. And I was in Germany. We were getting ready to rotate in Afghanistan to relieve those guys. And we got word, like literally we're packing all our stuff. It was only going to be another week or so before we rotated in Afghanistan. Excuse me. They would come to Germany, and basically they called it a rotate in place, a RIP. And we got word that our helicopter had been shot down. And, I was originally in Echo Platoon who had been on that helicopter, and I got moved into Foxtrot. So I had friends, Mike McGreevy, the OIC, had been my original OIC, and I had known Mike from years past. I mean, just a great guy. My youngest daughter and his daughter were only born months apart. So he and I frequently would talk about daughters. So I remember, the thought of losing Mike, Jacques Fontaine, Jeff Lucas, Jeff Taylor, Mike, and our task unit commander, Eric Christensen, were all the guys who were part of my troop. And then obviously we lost the individuals from SDV Team 1 and 2. And then we found out that we had lost the guys on the ground, and that Marcus was evading, And then finally they found Marcus. Myself and some other guys went up to Landstuhl, Germany, where he had been recovered, and they flew in. When they flew him in, they flew in Mike Murphy and Danny Dietz's bodies. They had been recovered. And so I remember being there. We stood watch for a little bit on their bodies while those guys, because we always have somebody that escorts the bodies home. So the guys that were escorting them home went and took a break, got some lunch. We stood watch. They came back. I met Marcus for the first time. And then probably a day or two later, we flew into Afghanistan. So, I don't know, kind of had struggled as a young leader. So I wanted to prove myself. Once again, a very dangerous thing, which is even more important why I think it's critical in life that you become content with, not necessarily content. You still want to rise up. We still want to be there. But I think it's dangerous when I think it makes people do erratic and potentially things for the wrong reasons. And I almost feel like I've lived my life that way, And I felt like that drove me like, hey, I want to get in the fight. I want to be in the mix. And as a combat leader, that's also a very dangerous thing because you're leading people into a situation where if it's not for the right reasons and you're not making the right decisions, yeah, people die. So that means decisions you're making ultimately send people to their death. And it's one thing when you're going after a mission and you're doing things according to plan. Unfortunately, that's part of the job. It's another thing if you have a leader who's making bad decisions, who places you in a terrible situation. And that's kind of what happened months later. In September, I made a bad call. We were on a mission. And without getting too deep into the details, all the details are in my book, The Trident. I go deep into the details on this. But I basically took myself off a position of tactical advantage, brought a machine gunner, and went down into the valley to try and enforce guys down below who were in a gunfight. A lot of people who don't understand tactics would say, well, what's wrong with that? That sounds heroic. It was driven by my own desire to be in the fight. It also went against, I had been told by my senior enlisted who we butted heads, hey, don't go down in that valley. I let my ego get in the way. And instead of asking why, I just said, screw you, I'm going. If I had stopped, I would have found out, hey, they're getting ready to call in an airstrike. Like, we need to know where everyone is. So when I made that decision to go down into that valley, it delayed that airstrike by 30 minutes. I am super fortunate that no one was killed or injured during that time. But I will tell you, it killed my professional reputation. By the time I got to the other side of the valley and out of the valley and linked back up with the guys, they were like, get rid of that dude. He's dangerous. Flew me back to Bagram to meet with the commanding officer and was, told, hey, we're thinking about kicking you out. There were a lot of guys who wanted to see me kicked out. And I think that was, I don't want to say rock bottom. I don't think I had hit that yet, but it was rock bottom enough that I thought about killing myself. The night prior to finding out their decision, whether they were kick me out or not, I pulled my gun out and put it in my mouth and thought about, ending my life. Thankfully, I did not. I saw a picture of my wife and kids and just thought, what are you doing? Went and got help, saw the chaplain, came back, he convinced me to wait and find out. And thankfully they did not kick me out. My commanding officer was really against the will of many of the guys. Many of the guys and some of the senior leaders said, get rid of that guy. He's dangerous. He's going to get somebody killed. And he said, well, I think he has potential. I think we need to humble him and I'm going to give him a second chance. And he did. So out of that second chance, there were several things that happened. They took away any awards I was supposed to get. They wrote a letter of reprimand that didn't go into my officer record, because if it had, it would have been the end of my career. That's kind of how the military works. But instead, he said, I'm going to put in my safe. If you do well the next go around, it gets shredded and gone. Your career keeps going. And he said, I'm going to send you to U.S. Army Ranger School. And which is funny, because when I was younger, I wanted to go to Ranger School just to go to Ranger School. It's just, I don't know, I wanted to check that box and be like, hey, if I'm a SEAL, I want to have a Ranger tab too. And that was not real uncommon in the SEAL teams back then. After the war kicked off, it was more uncommon because Ranger School is a hard school. It's hard on the body. Most guys lose 20, 30 pounds when they're going through Ranger School, because one of the things they use is a lack of food to create stress and adversity on you.
I hope you're enjoying the highlights so far. Today's video was sponsored by Huel as always. This is the Huel Black Edition. I've been using this for the past few months now. Huel Black Edition has just been released in the US and it is amazing. It has 35 grams of protein. It's ready to drink. It's got 26 vitamins and minerals and slow release carbs, meaning that you can fuel your performance or your day-to-day life with this. Find out more with the link in the description.
So yeah, now here I am 13 years in, had done pretty well, although I'd made all these mistakes as a leader, as a new leader, and now I'm being told to go to Ranger School. So yeah, I really kind of had a victim mindset about it. I was pretty angry and pissed off. Instead of being like, wow, I got a second chance. What can I do with this? I wasn't there yet. So a couple months later, went to Ranger School. Kind of hit rock bottom there. I failed the land nav course on my own accord because arrogantly thought I could knock out the entire course in the daytime. You were supposed to start at 3 a.m., 6 a.m. the sun came up. You had about 3 hours to complete this very long, arduous 6-point land navigation course. Well, I decided, well, hey, I'm good enough. I'm good enough. I'll cover the whole thing in 3 hours when the sun comes up. So I kicked around and screwed off and pissed and moaned about being there. And yeah, I didn't finish. So when that occurred, and I went to check in, the Ranger instructors, there's a good rivalry, for the most part, a healthy rivalry between SEALs and Rangers and other branches. And they started talking shit, hey, you suck, hey, Swabby, maybe if we had given you a boat, you would have finished, and stupid things like that. And I let my anger and everything that had happened just bubble up and basically told them, screw you in this course. And they said, are you quitting? And I said, yes. And they said, okay, well, here, get in this van, you're done. And man, when the words came out of my mouth, I was like, what are you doing? You're an idiot. Like I wanted to take them back, but at that point I felt like, well, too late now. And I just kind of resigned myself like, well, this is the end of your career. Like you've played your hand and, you'll never be able to recover from this. And I also had started to lie to myself in my head. And this is, the conspiracy theories in your mind. I bought into this idea that the guys would never follow me again. Like, hey, you've messed up too much. No one will ever follow you again. So that was kind of my thought, like, how am I ever going to be able to go back after the mistakes that I made? And now, oh my God, you just quit Ranger School. SEALs don't quit anything. If we'll kick you out if you quit. So I was like, I don't know how I can recover from this. I guess this is it. And I remember calling my wife and saying, hey, I guess I'm coming home tomorrow. I think this is done. I said, I think I'm going to get kicked out of the military. So she listened and was super understanding, went and saw the Ranger Colonel. And he was like, hey, do you want to talk to anybody in the SEAL team? I was like, not only no, but no. Like, I am ashamed, man. I don't want to talk to anybody. And he was like, well, hey, one of my friends is senior leader. Well, it was my old commanding officer, the one who I'd gone and seen, who said, hey, this war is going to last for decades. One of the most respected guys I know. There's no way I could not talk to him. And he had him on the phone. And I remember talking, and he just said, hey, Red, what are you doing? I laid out this sob story, and he said, listen to me. He said, the guys will follow you if you give them a reason to. He's like, that's all leadership is. He said, I don't care how bad you've messed up. Sustained superior performance over time is what people will follow. I don't care who you are. I don't care what team you're on. Humans will follow success. He's like, go crush that course, come back to the SEAL teams and give the guys a reason to follow you. And that's what I really needed to hear. Like, oh, there is actually a formula for me to drive forward. And that became a formula that I started to build all my leadership around. Lead yourself, lead others, lead always. I'm not perfect in it, but it was a formula I put in place that I used through Ranger School. I used it as I got back to the SEAL teams. And I just tried to, I stopped trying to take some shortcut to be a great leader and just focus on how to be the best leader of myself, which I was really good at, despite the doubts and the demons that live inside your head that I heard on a regular basis. And that was really hard for me because as a kid that had always grown up thinking of himself as a skinny runt, now I stepped into the phase of you're a fuck up. We don't want you. You're a fuck up. And that was really hard to come back. And, guys pulled no punches. I mean, my nickname was Rambo Red. Not a compliment. So, but it taught me a lot of resilience. And it also taught me to ignore those voices. I just got really good at, that demon in your mind that's telling you you're not good enough, that you're a fuck up, that you're a failure, ignore it. So I just always had this static in the back of my mind, like this ongoing music back there that I just ignored. And I just kept driving forward and just focus on, hey, lead yourself when it's time to lead others and make the right decision all the time, lead always. So all of that slowly but surely earned back, my credibility and trust with the guys. Ended up deploying to Iraq, and our troop deployed in April of 2007. And a very, very eventful deployment. Definitely the most action-packed deployment I was ever on. A lot of guys tell me it was one of the most action-packed they were ever on. I mean, our troop over that deployment conducted 80 missions. So 80 missions to capture or kill high-level Al-Qaeda or insurgent leaders. And as SEALs, it was like everything you ever dreamed of. So it was a lot of opportunity for me to lead and learn and really to try and put these things into place. And definitely, one night in June, we got into a very big, complicated firefight, multiple enemy positions, I had an enemy machine gunner and shooters up on a rooftop, barricaded in. I don't know if DJ told the story. He was shot in the chest. He was one of our guys on that target. And when he moved up and one of our other point men to try and take that rooftop, one of the guys shot him right in the chest. But thankfully his body armor, it struck a magazine and his body armor. Fell back, kind of created massive chaos. We had a grenade drop down and frag a couple of our guys and severely injured our interpreter. So chaos, screaming, blood, had women and children all in this target that we tried to pull inside, taking fire from the rooftop, which is shooting on other targets, and fire from another building around. Managed that pretty well, and we managed to pull everybody back along with the women and children to another target and then drop that building. And after that target that night, a lot of guys came up to me and said, "Hey man, you did a great job." It was kind of nice. It was like this full circle moment, like, hey, you proved you're not the fuck up. You have the ability to do this job, which was good. I think that was tremendous for my confidence.